Hello YouTubers. In this video I'm going to get into why I use a traditional or standard face cut. Everybody on YouTube these days is always talking about the Humboldt cut, the Humboldt cut, the Humboldt cut. Well, where I live and where many other people around the world, we're not West Coast loggers. Humboldt cut is fine, face cut is fine if you're doing great big West Coast or tall timber that's 3 feet and above in diameter on the stump. But if you're cutting just average small softwood, even smaller hardwood trees, reasons why the rest of us and the rest of the world use a standard cut is because we want to get our stumps as low to the ground as possible. Humboldt cuts are great if you have great big root flare and you have huge stumps. You want to get as much salvageable or merchantable timber out of your tree as you can. So you'll take your other part of your lower wedge out of the stump section of the tree, so to speak. Part of the reason, like I say, the reason why I use traditional or standard cut over here in this part of the world where I am is because the trees are smaller, it's softwood. We have a little bit of hardwood here, but not much, other than poplar, which is a semi-hardwood species. All my stumps are cut low to the ground because most of it is you have if you're an acreage owner, you're going to be doing this with a farm tractor. If you're a semi-pro logger or a full-time logger in any other part of the world, you're cutting wood with a skidder, wheeled machines, track machine, whatever. You want your stumps close to the ground because you don't want big ugly stumps sticking up all over, because you're either going to get hung up, you're going to bang around and beat up your equipment. So anyways, without yapping anymore here, I'm going to set the camera up here right close to the tree here, and I'll show you what I normally do. Now, just for a little bit of perspective here, this is an old stump that from about 2-3 years ago here. It's a jack pine stump here. This is kind of typical of how most loggers in my area traditionally, if we were cutting by hand, this is how they were cut. This little wedge over here, that's just a 5-inch wedge to give you an idea. So technically that stump is just barely over 6 inches high off the ground. This is pretty much how we cut our stumps in this part of the world here, far as height wise. So just to give you a little bit of an idea. Okay, just to give you an idea here what I'm going to do, got my old classic favorite, my original saw here, my Johnson Red 630, which nobody hardly uses anymore, but even I don't use it much, just the odd time. But for demonstration purposes today, this is the saw that I used probably the most in my life for when I did a lot of timber falling in my area. So anyways, I'm gonna get my cut in and show you what I'm doing. Okay, now I don't make a huge wide face cut, mostly just because this is softwood. You're not going to get much fiber tear. Also, the other thing, there's a lot less risk of a barber chair. Typically, I take like a 3-inch cut, 2.5 inch. I might go ahead and clean this up and take a little bit more. But like I say, the name of the game here is to keep your stump low to the ground, because if you're running around with the wheeled machines, you get into stumps, you have to be able to drive over them, or if you get to, you try to avoid it, but sometimes you can't. And if you have a little bit higher of a stump, you go back and you retrim them and bring them closer to the ground. That's part of the reason why we do a conventional cut here, so you have a fairly flat stump. Show you me dropping the tree here and getting at it here. Now, this isn't all that big of a tree, like they say, maybe a 12-inch at the stump and 8-inch on average up the trunk or whatever. This is kind of, like I say, average pulpwood type trees that we have in our area here, local jack pine. And I mean, some is bigger, some is smaller, but 10 to 12-inch range type of thing, or 14-inch at most or whatever. So that's kind of typical of what we have in our area. But anyways, here we go. Okay, now I actually cut this stump a little bit. I made my back cut a little bit higher than even I normally would. Because it's in a softwood species, like I say, I don't leave a whole lot of. In this particular case, it had a heavy, well, not a heavy, but it had a generous forward lean in the direction I wanted to go. So I didn't leave as much hinge wood. I pretty much cut everything up. Once it started to go, I just nibbled it up right up close and left a little bit of hinge wood, but not much. You can see here, still made a nice cut. Now, if you're making saw logs out of this, what you do is you come in and just take and trim that opposing face off and square it up. Or a lot of times, even for pulpwood, I would do that. Just makes a nice clean load for the truckers when they're hauling it to the mill, and the mills appreciate when you bring in wood like that. So anyways, put it in this hole here right where I wanted it. This is just a firewood operation here today, but just to give you an idea of overall, like I say, I got a couple of these little these are just little 5-inch wedge, and you can see that stump is literally just at the 4.5–5 inch mark. There's a little bit of like a 2-inch riser over here on the back side of it, and a lot of times what I do is I will come back in and retrim that off if I'm working in an area with a machine, like I say, because if you're going around corners with a skidder or something like that, you don't want to be bouncing up over big high stumps. So well, there we have it, folks. That's part of the reason why the rest of us do what we do in the rest of the world when we're not on big coastal timber. So no offense to the guys that are cutting out west. That's how they've done it for 50 years, and it's how they continue to do it because it's a necessity. Humboldts are also good if you want a tree to leave the stump or slide off and drop it down, because if you have a tree that stays on the stump too long, if it's real long, what can happen, like what those guys are doing, when you drop a tree, if the top hits the ground and the butt end of the log is still up on the stump, what'll happen is it'll snap the tree, usually. So they kind of want the tree to clear the stump and get down flat on the ground. That's part of the understanding that part of the reason why they do what they do. For most of the rest of us hand cutters in other parts of the world cutting small timber or smaller softwoods, we use conventional cuts because we're not losing a whole lot of timber. We're just taking a small notch up out of the upper part of the tree. It only constitutes a few inches. So now that varies. If you're cutting in big hardwood in the East Coast or something, they take big wide face cuts because they want the tree to lay over. You don't want a tree. What'll happen is if your cut closes up too soon on a hardwood tree, you'll split the tree and get a good chance of getting a good barber chair going. So in softwood like this, and especially this is dead standing firewood, dead standing pine firewood that I'm cutting, the fiber is already weak. It's a short fibered species. Once the notch closes up, literally it breaks off, and if it's already going in the direction you want it to go, at that point it really doesn't matter. It doesn't have to hold on to the stump right till it hits the ground. Every application is different. This is just what I do. This is what all the guys in my area, how they've cut traditionally. We cut our back cuts on a flat. We don't do these weird angle cuts into the stumps. That's usually amateurs, weekend firewood cutters, and I also know a lot of those people have gotten themselves hurt, and unfortunately a few of them that have got themselves killed. Bad cutting practices, basically. So anyways, everybody, this is just a short little video of why I do what I do, and what a lot of other people do around, like I say, around the country. And it's we'd use traditional or standard cut, face cuts, because no, it's not amateur hour, it's not a joke, it's a necessity. We want our stumps low to the ground for getting around with mechanical equipment. Just the reason why I do what I was taught. And if you got to get around with a piece of equipment in the bush, you understand right quick. My dad drilled that into me years ago, because him and his dad ran a sawmilling and logging operation, and they had to move a lot of wood out of the bush, and nothing they hated worse than having cutters that were disrespectful of what it was my grandpa's equipment, and he didn't want to get beat up. So you had to cut your stumps low. If you didn't, you get your ass chewed out. So. And the same with when I started cutting years back with my dad, he taught me the same thing. Is if he seen you making an ugly high stump, he'd get mad at you, and for good reason. It was just second nature to him. Also, another thing in my area here, in my province where I live, if you're cutting commercial timber or even firewood on public lands, by law you have to have your stumps lower well, the old standard was 12 inches. I think they lowered it now. You can't have any stumps higher than 10 inches by law. If a conservation officer in this area are the ones who enforce the rule, if they come upon you and they do periodic checks on you when you're cutting or operating in the bush, not very often, but they do stop by, do a surprise visit. If they see you got big, high, jagged, ugly stumps, they will give you a correction order to go and recut all your stumps, or you're issued a hefty fine. So it's your choice. It's written into our, what they call here, our Forestry Act. We have no choice. We have to cut low stumps. If you cut high stumps, you're either going to get fined or you got to go back and redo your work, and nothing sucks more than having to go back and recut a bunch of stumps. So our standard here used to be a lot higher, and then because of tree planting operations, they couldn't get contractors that were willing to pull what they call brackies or tree plows, which is like a some of them is a drag chain with a rolling, tumbling. Well, anyways, just look it up on YouTube or Google it. You'll see what tree planting brackie, and it'll show you what they either have to pull it with a crawler cat or with a large wheel skidder. And nobody wants to beat their equipment. They couldn't find contractors that were willing to do the work if the stumps are too high, because you either get your equipment hung up in the stumps or beat the hell out of the equipment. So by law, they put the stumps quite low. So we're bound by the rule. We have to. So that's why we do what we do here. But anyways, everybody, thank you for stopping by and checking out this little video on why I do conventional face cuts. So anyways, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. It means a lot to us small content providers here on the tube. So anyways, everybody, thanks again, and we'll see you all in the next one. Till then, take care.